Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Brandon H. Lee. I play Kwon Jae-Sung in Cobra Kai Season 6, and you're watching the game plan.
Hey everybody, this is Giancarlo Aulino reporting for the Game Plan, and I'm happy to be joined by my guest today, who's going to be talking about the exciting season of Cobra Kai. Which, if you saw part one and two, unfortunately his character didn't have the best of endings, but the show as a whole had a great one. He played the role of the villain Kwon Jae-Sung on season 6 of Cobra Kai. He is Brandon H. Lee. How you doing, Brandon?
What's up, Giancarlo? Thanks so much for having me on, and that was a super cool intro. Thank you.
Appreciate it. I'm doing great. And Brandon, this series was popular for so many years since it got to Netflix, took a life of its own. You came in on the final season. Just can you talk to us of what it was like being a part of the final season, and what was it like seeing the finale in person like that?
Yeah, it just to sum it up, I guess I'm beyond honored, and it feels like a still feels like a dream, even though it's been some time now. I'm a lifelong martial artist. I've been training Taekwondo my whole life. So to be on a show like this, where it's probably the biggest martial arts legacy in terms of a show, like, going back 40 years into the Karate Kid movies, it was definitely a dream come true, but also coming into it, was definitely nerve-wracking as well. But everyone on the project was just so welcoming and warm and collaborative, and they're just like they're 6 seasons in for a reason. They're just a well-oiled machine, and so the creators of the show, John, Josh, and Hayden, were so open-minded to what I wanted to bring to the character, and they were also very communicative on what they wanted for the character and why this character was in the show. So it was just yeah, I guess overall it was just a dream come true, and it was nerve-wracking at first, but being there, it's just they made it so easy to work with.
That's great. And can you just take us back to like when you auditioned for the role, what your initial impressions were like, and how was the action when you found out you would be playing this main villain in the final season of Cobra Kai?
Yeah, so I've actually said it in the past, but actually I auditioned for Cobra Kai in season 2 when I first got into acting. It was one of my very first auditions. I don't even remember what role it was for, and I'm so glad it didn't happen because I wasn't ready for it anyways. So yeah, and then so I auditioned again for season 6 probably. I think it was April of 2023. And I sent in an audition tape, and it's very rare as an actor. If there's any other actors out there, I'm sure they feel the same way, or they can resonate with this feeling of like, it's so rare where you submit an audition tape and you're like, I feel so good about this. And you're like, you just feel like it's meant for you. And that's how I kind of felt with Quan. So I sent in the tape, and they loved it. They got back to me pretty quickly, and I was supposed to meet the creators, John, Josh, and Hayden, on Zoom for our callback. They actually told me that they felt like I seemed to, they were a little bit worried if I was like, they told me this after the fact, but they were a little bit worried if I could be mean enough for the character, because in my slate, which is pretty much you just like introduce yourself, you say your name and you say your height and all that stuff. I was just nerding out and telling him how big of a fan I am of the show. I've been watching it since the YouTube Red days. And then I think they saw that first and then my tape. So they just saw this like super bubbly kid. And then that same kid tried to be mean. Like I think it was hard for them to see. So they gave me some feedback to, crank it up a notch. And they told me to thank Karate Kid 2. Kind of a wink wink to Chosen. And so I just remember Chosen having that kind of undeniable, like he knows he's the baddest mother effer in the room kind of energy. So I just tried to channel that as much as I could, and they loved it. But turned out that the strikes were happening. The writer strike and the actor strike were happening. So for about 8 months, I didn't know if I booked the role or not. I just knew that I was in consideration for it. So from April of 2023 all the way until January of 2024, then I found out I booked the role a week before we were shooting episode three in part one.
Wow.
So it was a whirlwind of emotions. But it was like when I finally did get the call, I was ecstatic. Like it was surreal, man.
And when you want to find your voice in the character, because you're playing this new type of villain that they're going to end it off with, like, how did you find the voice of Kwon, like the mannerisms, the sarcasm? Like, how did you maybe implement that into this character to bring it to life like that?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot that went into it, but it all starts from what's on the page, and that's where the creators and writers of the show write these characters so well. And so what was also really cool was this being like my first professional acting role, I kind of understood what I would always like watch interviews of actors and they would say, "Oh, the character," they would discover the character when they're on set, when they're in wardrobe, when they have the hair. And I finally feel like I understood that because the moment that they put me in the hair, the spiky hair and all that stuff, and then also seeing the choreography of the fights, like all of this collaboration from these different departments gave me so much more clarification on who this guy was. A big thing in the voice beforehand was I was really trying to study Korean accents because I'm obviously Korean American and I speak perfect English. People are very confused when they meet me in person sometimes. So both my parents are from Seoul, Korea, and so I would have them read each line and I would record it and I would just listen to it over and over again. And their English is very good, but they have a very subtle accent. So I would just hear what they struggled with. A lot of times they would add extra syllables to things. There's certain letters that's hard for them to pronounce. So I would try to crank that up a tiny bit. And it was just weird like middle ground of I knew how to do Korean accents, but more of in a comical way to like make fun of the accent. But I knew this character needed to be like serious. He wasn't supposed to come off as like a comedic relief. So I wanted to make sure it felt natural, but it was still obvious enough. So it was this weird middle ground to find. But throughout the show, I felt more and more comfortable with it. I think because I felt a lot more comfortable with the character as we kept shooting.
And you mentioned it there, like this is your first acting role, which I'm sure everyone's gonna watch this and be amazed by that because of how you killed it this season. But did that put even more pressure on you as yourself as an actor in terms of like you're going in there with like a blank slate of bringing a character to life, script by script, each episode? Like, I guess what were the nerves like when you're doing each scene and going through that of being a main role in this season?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I do say it as it's like my first like professional quotes acting role, but I've done a lot of short films over the years and I've shot a lot of my own content and my own short films over the years. I also worked professionally in stunts beforehand on a couple movies, so I did feel very comfortable on set and I knew what it was like being on set. And I think just having those reps of like shooting my own short films and not waiting for the big role to come because I don't think I would have been ready, or I don't even think I would have booked the role as Quan had I not been shooting all those short films beforehand. So once we were there, like there was definitely nerves coming into it, but once we were like actually on set, actually doing it, it felt comfortable because I'd done it a bunch of times in the past and it's just the same thing. It's like the same thing as you're shooting a short film on your iPhone. It's just a different scale. There's just bigger cameras and more people involved. But I mean, also shout out to all the actors, the veterans on the show, because they're such good actors that it doesn't matter how nervous I am. The moment the cameras are rolling and I'm looking at them, I can't help but like be there right there with them. Like I don't even have to act. I'm just reacting to them, honestly. So that was also a huge reason why. And just all the directors on the show were very, very easy to work with and guided me very well. Especially Ralph Macchio, who directed the first episode I was in. That in particular, I was definitely like super scared going into it, like finding out that he's directing, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to ruin this dude's legacy. He's already a legend. But then, he was such an amazing director, and it was so perfect that he directed the first episode I was in, just because he knows that franchise better than anyone else. He's been in it for 40 years. He knows how to introduce new characters. He's an actor too, so he knows how to talk to actors in a way for them to understand it too. So yeah, I would say just like definitely there was that pressure like coming into it, but honestly, like once we were there, it was just it. I was just working with the best people that it was impossible to like not do my job, you know? So yeah.
And you mentioned they're veteran actors, and one of them, got to give some love to him. He's a past guest here, Martin Kove. You got a
Yes.
lot of great scenes with him, and
Yes.
every time he's in a scene, just brings up the intensity. So when you're working with Martin Kove in those scenes and bringing it to life, like you're going to be this new star pupil of his Cobra Kai dojo, what was
Yeah.
that like for you?
Oh my gosh. Um, Martin Kove is I learned so much from him, both from him just like giving me advice, but also mainly just from observing him. Him while he's working is just like it's just a masterclass to see how an actor handles himself. Like when we were shooting episode 3, it was like 20, 30 degrees outside. It was freezing cold. Like if you remember in that episode, there's like little ponds you can see, and those ponds are frozen. That's how freaking cold it was out there. And Martin Kove is out there, oldest one on set, and never complaining once. He's never in his trailer. He's always on set. He's always locked in, and just amazing, man. I just do remember having those moments like when I would be, it was like my first day on set and I have to like look at him face to face. And my character is supposed to kind of stand up to him, Like that was definitely very, very like a pinch me moment of like, oh my gosh, no way. Like that's Martin Cove. But no, yeah, he's amazing and he's just such a kind and warm person too. And I yeah, I guess he feels like a real sensei to me when it comes to the acting world, for sure.
Yeah. And he's a misunderstood character, right? He's not the villain,
hmm
misunderstood, as he likes to say. And just going on to that, like your character, I don't know if any characters on the series had a song named after their characters. So when you saw Rise of Kwon come out, what was your reaction to that?
Oh, that was crazy. You know what was funny? I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again. The way I found out was Ralph Macchio texted me out of nowhere. I think it was around like 4th of July, so it was before part 1 came out. And he just goes, "Happy 4th of July, Rise of Kwon." And I was like, "Huh?" I was like, "Is that the name? What is that?" And he's like, "It's the name of the score in the fight." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, what the heck?" And I've always been such a big fan of the music on the show. Like Zach and Leo do such an amazing job. It just adds so much and it's like gives you goosebumps every time. I still like whenever I train, I'm still like playing some of their score like just to get me hype when I have to work out or whatever. But no, I loved that with Rise of Kwon, it they brought a whole new flavor to it that I felt like fit the characters so well. And they also pay homage to the culture of the characters too. You know, they were using Korean instruments. They used the kayogum, which is kind of like I don't know what it is super well, but I know my mom plays it. It's a very traditional. It's almost like a horizontal guitar, I guess. Um, yeah, so it's really really cool that they used a lot of like stuff like that, and I felt like with these new characters coming in from Korea, they added a new flavor to the show that we've never seen before when it came to the score. And also with Mortal Kombat too, I didn't even know that was the name of the score until after the show was out too. Like I remember Zach and Leo, they sent me that before before part two actually even came out. And they didn't tell me the title of it. And then they like made a collab post on Instagram where they showed the behind the scenes on how they made Mortal Kombat. But I thought that was just like a joke. Like they were like saying Mortal Kombat. And I was like, oh, that's funny. And then I looked up the score on Spotify and I was like, oh my gosh, it's actually called Mortal Kombat.
Wow.
So it's like, it's really funny how I found out those things. And I mean, I'm shout out Zach and Leo for I found out at the premiere for part three. I asked them if they're the ones that name the songs, and they said they do. So shout out Zach and Leo for naming not one but two songs after Kwon. That's crazy, man.
That's awesome. And you mentioned also too, like you have a legitimate background in martial arts. So coming onto the show and seeing everyone else's background in martial arts and working on the fight choreography, like for those that aren't too familiar with it, what's a day to day like when you're shooting those fight scenes?
Yeah, so honestly, the biggest culture shock for me coming into the show was realizing that they have barely any time to learn their fights. Um, Me as a lifelong martial artist and coming from the stunt background, I was used to working on a lot of times for like action shows. A lot of times the movies get more time to train their actors. TV sometimes moves a lot faster. And Cobra Kai, coming from YouTube Red, they move very, very fast, almost like a soap opera. And so, you know, for part one, for episode three, that fight, the three verse one with Kwon, we were learning that fight the day before in between takes while we were shooting. So like
That's
we never
crazy.
even got to like go into the stunt dojo and learn it and stuff. For part two, we got to a bit, but I was just like mesmerized by like, oh my gosh, I've trained for this my whole life and I'm struggling. These actors have never trained before the show and they're still doing such an amazing job. Like I was just mind blown. And you know, being able to train with them, it was interesting. So like we shot episode three of part one in like January of 2024, and then it was about like a month break in between then and part shooting part two. So I had barely met any of the main cast yet. So I was like, during that month off, I was training my butt off. Like I was like so excited to like meet them all and work with them because I'm such big fans of them. And then, you know, that first day that we're all like training together, I was like seeing them up close and in person. I was like, these guys are, you know, 6 seasons into the show now. Most of them are, they're like real black belts now. And they're really, 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 really good. And yeah, they said that they felt like relieved that I said like me and like Reina, who also is a lifelong martial artist, we're coming into the show and we're like, this is hard. They felt like, oh my gosh, we feel so like relieved and like heard, seen because like we thought it was hard, but this is the only thing we've ever done, you know, like when in terms of action and martial arts. So no, they're the real deal, and I think I'm really excited. I hope they continue to do martial arts. I hope they continue to do like action movies and shows, those actors, because they're very, 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 very good. And if they get on a show where they fortunately have even more prep time, I think they can, the sky's the limit for sure. But yeah, no, when you watch Cobra Kai, you would think that we have months to learn the fights. No, like we're doing it on the day, you know? Yeah. And so shout out to the stunt team too. It wouldn't be possible without them. So yeah.
And yeah, just mentioning the stunt team there, like, is it more difficult for you coming from a martial arts background because you want it to be like as authentic as possible, or with the stunt team involved, does it help you in a way and calm those nerves?
No, it definitely helps. Definitely helps. Shout out Ken Bearfield, Don Lee, and Tony Chung, and my stunt double Dante Ha as well. All of them. I mean, they're they know their shit, like they know it, you know. So and I loved that they had no ego involved. The moment they met me, they knew my background. They knew I've been doing Taekwondo my whole life. They knew I had worked professionally in sets beforehand, so they knew I was familiar on what they do. And they had no ego. They were like, "We know you. We know what you can do. We want you to go crazy. Okay? We want you to throw every single kick, flip, twist, whatever the heck you've ever wanted to do. We want you to go all out in the show." And they were so collaborative, and the way they choreograph the fights, it's like every single character has their own fight style, and it's so distinct. And that again helped me discover the character even more. And it was like just this perfect collaboration of, them putting their interpretation of Kwon, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even think of that. And then also allowing me to add things that I want to put in. It was beautiful, and I really, really hope I get to work with them again. Um, Obviously not on Cobra Kai, but on a different show, hopefully. Yeah.
Unfortunately, there, like, we have to bring it up because on Cobra Kai, your character, I guess the aura was too much for the rest of the cast. Because I saw some of the comments on some YouTube videos, like, you were so
Mm.
strong that you were the only person that could take yourself out. So that scene where, unfortunately, Kwon dies, like, how did that whole thing materialize? Like, that did that scene take longer just to choreograph, or was that just like a spur of the moment type of thing?
It was definitely a little bit of both. So coming into the show, I did not know the arc of the character at all. I didn't know how many episodes he was going to be in. I didn't know anything until I was shooting episode 3. And then Hayden, one of the creators of the show, was pulling me aside in between takes and telling me the arc of the character. And then he, told me the inevitable what happens to him. And I was just like, what the heck? And what the heck in a good way. Like he was just like telling me like nobody's ever died on camera in the show and it's gonna be a kid. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like now I'm feeling even more pressure coming into the show, you know? But it was something that I talked with the writers and the creators of the show throughout the process. So I would like bring it up just here and there because we knew everyone knew it was gonna happen. Everyone was like we were almost like counting down the days, you know. I remember the day we actually shot it, one of the PAs, she actually on my breakfast order, she put like Quan and a little tombstone because it was
Oh,
so funny. And so everyone was kind of looking forward to it too because like they knew it was such a big moment. Um, but yeah, it was a lot of conversations with the writers on like why Quan goes to those lengths because that was the biggest thing for me was I was just trying to justify. I know Quan is like, he's all about no mercy and here and there, but why does he go to those lengths, you know? Like if there's one thing to be no mercy and doing dirty tricks, there's another thing in picking up a knife and with with bad intent, you know? Um, so I mean, I do remember we did have maybe like a week beforehand where we were choreographing that ending and I remember the stunt team had a bunch of different variations and the only thing that I had with it is some of the variations were really cool. It was very purposeful that with the writing too, the writers wanted to make it very purposeful that Axel didn't do it on purpose. Axel didn't know and Quan kind of did it to himself. Like he fell on it. It's just like it has to be very obvious that it's a freak accident, you know? So some of the choreography of the variations, it felt like too easy for him to go down. Like some of them was like he's running into a punch or whatever. And so I pitched the idea to the stunt team because they had the tornado kick. They had Axel doing a tornado kick. So I was like, what if I try to do a tornado kick at the same time? And I'm trying to distract him with kicks. And I try to do the tornado kick at the same time while I'm trying to use the knife. But then he kicks me midair and then I land on it. And they loved it. They were like, show me. And I was like, okay. And I did it. And they loved it. And I was like, and we ended up doing that on the day. And yeah, it was beautiful. It was beautiful because it just we were originally supposed to stack the hit, which means like you're not actually hitting making contact with the camera angle. You can kind of manipulate it where it looks like you're hitting someone, but you're not. But there was one the first take, Patrick actually hit me a tiny bit and he was like, "Oh dude, I'm so sorry." I'm like, "No, that felt good. Like, can you do that again?" And shout out Patrick because the timing on that is ridiculous. But yeah, what ended up working out is that because Patrick hit me for real, they were able to shoot it in a 50-50. So you see everything so much better than if it was like over one of our shoulders. And you can just see it so clearly. And the fact that it's positive impact, it's just, there's so many things that happened on the day as well that were kind of accidents, but ended up making it even better, you know? So, yeah, that day was definitely, uh, surreal and very. I was very honored to be a part of that because it was a very, very, very big moment and probably one of the most shocking moments in the franchise. So to be a part of it was a dream come true for sure.
And just even on that too, like from what you were aware of, like was that always the plan? Like he would die in that like brawl at the end, or was there maybe like another final fight draft that you were aware of, where, or even another character where he fights another character and dies from that? Like, were you aware of any other variations of that?
So that's what the writers do so well on the shows. They know what they want very early on. Like I think they've been planning this out for a very long time. They told me they knew from day one Kwon is gonna die, and he's gonna die from this huge brawl, and he's gonna die from this night. And but they have such a good balance of like knowing exactly what they want, but also being flexible in the process. They're really flexible when it comes to how are we gonna get there. So I think that's like such a good balance when it comes to creativity because sometimes if you're too rigid and it has to be exactly like this, it takes a lot of the authenticity out of it in the moment and takes a lot of like missed opportunities out, you know? So I love that they were very clear on like, this is what happens, this is why it happens. And you see later in part three, like what was really interesting was like for me, I didn't know what really happens in part three. And so
Oh
watching
wow.
it, I was like, holy crap, that's why Quan had to die. I was like, this all makes sense. Like it's all a puzzle piece to what happens, you know? So it was, you know, I think a lot of fans are like they might misinterpret me and being a little sad or I don't think the character should die. No, I think he definitely should have died because otherwise a lot of what happens in part three can't happen, you know? And part three was, oh my gosh, so good. So um yeah, I think yeah, they knew it from day one and I that's where their genius is and that's why they've been able to make the show for 6 seasons and I'm so excited to see what they do next and you know, I really hope they do more spin-offs because this franchise is just too good, man. It's too good.
I agree. I would love to see that. And you mentioned there, like you didn't know what was going to go on in part three. So sitting back from it, like what was it like then seeing it as a fan and from a different perspective because you're now coming off from working on the show to not knowing what's going to happen, what the ideas were, what the storylines were going to be. So what was it like for you for part three?
It was so awesome because I started as a fan and the fact that I get to finish the show as a fan too was super cool. I mean, like watching season six is just kind of a trip for me in general. Like part one, you know, I'm in like one episode and it's kind of I'm like, why am I there? Like it's like I'm watching as a fan, then all of a sudden I'm like, well, oh, that's me. And then part two, it's like I'm in it a lot more and it's like really trippy and like I know everything that happens and I know why it happens. And so for part three to like kind of sit back and just watch it from that lens of like purely as a fan, like I was just I just remember I was literally yelling at the TV because I was so excited like during the training montage for Johnny and Daniel. Like I was like freaking out and then the final fight with Johnny versus Wolf, like oh my gosh. Yeah, it was just it was so good, man. And like as a fan, I feel the same pain of like no, it's over. You know, like oh my gosh, like I don't even care if I was a part of it anymore. I just don't want it to be over, you know? Like but yeah, to be a part of it is ridiculous. It's again, like I said, I keep having to pinch myself over and over again.
And you like yourself to just want to give our viewers here more, I guess, to get a chance to know you better, like outside of acting here and outside of the show, like your Taekwondo background, like what got you into that, and what age did you really want to pursue that and to the lengths that you did?
Yeah, so I've trained my whole life. Like I said, my dad, Young Hyuk Lee, is a grandmaster, and he owns a school in Minnesota called Lee's Champion Taekwondo Academy, and it's been open for over 30 years now. Um, my whole family does it. We've been it's like a family business, and yeah, my dad was a three-time Korean national champion in Seoul before he moved to the United States, and so. Yeah, no, growing up, like I don't even when people ask me that question, like I don't even it's I literally apparently I kicked before I could walk. Like I don't even remember learning for the first time. I don't even remember really even getting my black belt. Like I was so young. There's bits of it that I remember, so it's just a part of who I am. I think the biggest thing was the reason why I stuck with it was number one, I loved it. Like my dad and my older brother were always my biggest idols, and then watching like Jackie Chan and Power Rangers, I would always try to copy them all the time. And it was just something that I think my parents never, they always made sure to allow me to train from my heart. Like they didn't force it down my throat too much. You know, at times obviously they're like, no, you have to come, but like they allowed me to just love it, you know, and that was something that I think is the reason why I still do it today. Um, it is really just like a part of who I am. I think also growing up in the Midwest, kind of being like the token Asian guy, and then, you know, it's even more of like a stereotype that I do martial arts too, you know. I always kind of felt like a weirdo, kind of like an outlier. And I always had this mixed feeling towards martial arts too, because, you know, I'd always kind of get made fun of for it, like, oh, you're the martial arts guy. Like, whoa, don't kick me, bro. Or like whatever. Um, but it was always something that was always there for me and I could always come back to. And it was always like a form of expression. And it was honestly probably like the only thing that I was actually good at. You know, there's a lot of things that I try to do, a lot of other sports I wanted to do, and I would try really hard and I would work really hard at it, but I was never as good at it as I was with martial arts. So yeah, it's honestly an ongoing journey. Again, like I'm trying to find my balance of training again because yeah, I've just been so busy lately. I haven't been training as much, and I trained again this morning, and I was like, oof, I am rusty. Like I got to get back to it, you know? So it's always I feel like martial arts is something that always grounds me and whenever I'm not feeling like myself or like I'm life throws things at you that just makes you feel really chaotic or whatever, it's always there for me whenever I need it to come back to make me feel like myself again. So yeah, it's always just been like a roller coaster up and down journey, and now I want to explore other martial arts as well. Um, my main thing has always been Taekwondo my whole life, so learning other martial arts and learning the philosophies from those arts is really interesting for me as well. Yeah.
Is there another martial art that like comes to mind that you're mostly like interested in like pursuing?
Oh, there's a lot, man. I mean, I've been doing a lot of boxing the past couple years as well. Um, little bit of kickboxing here and there. I definitely feel like I need to work on grappling, so some type of like either jujitsu or judo or wrestling. I think that feels like a weakness for me that I feel like I need to work on. Um, but yeah, I think I don't want to limit it to one, you know? Just want to kind of try a little bit of everything. Yeah.
What this sounds like, I'm gonna say is because I'm sure your popularity right now. You're saying you're learning all these different martial arts. Is there a UFC contract coming up soon for you or something?
Oh no, heck no, man. Oh my gosh. No, UFC is it's like it's its whole own thing, you know. I am a martial artist, but UFC is on a whole people that fight in their sports, it's a whole nother ball game. You know, there's where you learn how to do martial arts and you can definitely defend yourself, but people that are fighting in their sport, especially UFC, that's like that's the top of the top, you know? Like, oh my goodness, those guys train so hard. I mean, even I think like a month or two ago, I sparred in kickboxing for the first time, and I was like so not used to having punches thrown at my face, and I was like flinching like crazy, and like no, it's its whole own thing. So, um, yeah, I mean, I want to learn other martial arts here and there, but like no, not in terms of like actually competing, like in fighting. Nah, man, I need to keep my body intact and my brain intact, you know? Yeah.
Is there like anybody that you're a fan of in terms of like actively competing, like whether it's Taekwondo or MMA, like any sort
Ooh,
of martial art?
that's a really good question. Well, I actually watched Benavidez fight
Oh,
for the first time. David Benavidez, Dallas Dupree Young and I, who plays Kenny, we got to go out there uh because Dallas is sponsored by Aqua Plus, and so they invited us to come out and watch the show, and that was really, really cool. So I was a big fan of him because I was doing a lot of research going into the fight, and that guy's a beast, man. Um, I watch UFC here and there, but I don't know names very well. So yeah, I think it's something I want to learn more about for sure. But yeah, I'm kind of in this weird transitional period where I'm like, I feel like there's so many things I want to learn that I'm like, yeah, it's just too many different things. So I feel like I need to start dialing it down on like one or two and like actually make progress on them. But in terms of like actually watching stuff, I don't know too many names. No.
is there like anybody who you feel deserves more recognition for their contributions to like I'll ask you about like Taekwondo because that's where your skill set is and your background. Like, do you think there's
Ooh,
someone that deserves more recognition?
I mean, I think there's a lot. I think the sport in general does. I think a lot of martial arts sports in general do. Um, if people don't know, I actually competed for Team USA in 2019. Um, and you know, I was my professional experience was very short-lived because at that time I had to decide whether or not I wanted to go all in on movies or, competitive taekwondo. And so, but training with the national team was a huge like, oh my gosh, these guys they put everything into this, and a lot of it's having to come out of their own pocket, and it's like it's kind of crazy. Like how I was a big reason why I it was easy for me to like, okay, I'm gonna go all in on movies was I was representing Team USA and yet I'm having to pay for my own tournament entry fee. I was like, what the heck? Like these guys are all paying for their own stuff all the time and they're literally the best in the country? Like ridiculous to me, you know? And so I think for USA Taekwondo, like I mean there's a lot of people that are doing a lot of work to keep pushing it forward, but I mean there's definitely something wrong there in my opinion where I think, if you're I think anyone who's the best in the country at their craft and they're dedicating their whole life to it, number one, they should be getting paid. Number two, they definitely shouldn't be having to pay themselves, like to actually compete. So, I mean, yeah, that was something to me that I think just that whole circuit, I feel like deserves more recognition. But definitely easier said than done. Like I'm not familiar with so much. I'm sure there's so many people that are doing a lot of work to get that done, that I'm probably unaware of, and it's easy for me to say to like, oh, we need more movement in this, but yeah, in terms of personal experience, I was like, wow, these guys are top level athletes and they're giving everything to it purely off of passion. So yeah, and I think there's a lot of other martial arts too, that people are at a very high level, but it's not necessarily like mainstream martial arts, or it's not like, yeah, and they're just devoting their whole life to it and they're not able to make a living off of it, but they're there purely for passion. And I think all those artists definitely deserve more recognition for sure.
And just a couple final questions here before I let you
Mhm.
go. You're somebody like fairly young into your acting career right now, had a big role on this show. What's the best piece of advice that you received so far as you embark on this acting career?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. Um, hmm. I think something that I think would be more applicable to someone who's starting out, um, that's not too intricate is I was very fortunate to work on a movie called Shang-Chi Legend of the Ten Rings, the Marvel movie. And it was my very first movie, which was crazy. Um, and I was so honored to be there, but I had mad imposter syndrome because I was so new to the industry and everyone there was like veterans and the best at what they do. And I was there part of the stunt team, and I was working on the movie for about 3 months, and then COVID shut down the production, and we all got sent home, but I unfortunately didn't get brought back, and I think it was definitely justifiable why I didn't, because I just couldn't keep up with the big dogs. I was brand new to this, and everyone here, they're like Jackie Chan's stunt team, and like they've been doing this for like decades. But I got to learn so much from it, and I think if it wasn't for that project, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And I remember the day I was leaving, I went to every single person there, each stunt coordinator, fight coordinator, every member of the stunt team, and I asked them what is something they think I could work on. And when I was thinking of it from a technical standpoint, I was like, oh, me as a Taekwondo guy, I'm really good with my feet, but I'm not good with my hands. Like, do I need to work on more boxing, this and that? And they were just like, it's just experience, man. Like, you just need just experience. I'm like, what do you mean by that? Like, I need to be on sets more? And like, no, just pick up the camera and just shoot. Just keep doing it. It's like, I don't know. I felt like it was a aha moment of like, it comes down to just reps at the end of the day. And I think a lot of times when you're like trying to get better at something, like if I'm like if I'm like comparing it to like basketball, for example, do you think you would get better at basketball from only shooting all the time or actually playing a full 5-on-5 game? Like for me, I was doing all these drills and not actually playing it, like not actually filming. So I think um that was probably the best piece of advice for me. It's like it's so easy to get stuck into these new drills, and oh, this one thing is gonna make you great. Like no, there's not one thing. You have to just do it all like all at once. You just do the actual main craft of it, and just get in front of the camera and just keep doing it over and over and over and over again, you know? Um, I think that's probably the best piece of advice. And I think 1000% wouldn't be where I'm at today without that.
That's great advice there. And Brandon, before we wrap up here and let you go, how can our viewers here, our listeners at the Game Plan, stay up to date with everything you're doing, all the projects you got coming up, and follow you on social media?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I had a great time on here. You can follow me on Instagram, and TikTok, Brandon H. Lee underscore official. And I also have YouTube, also under Brandon H. Lee, and I've been posting there a lot more regularly lately. I've been doing, if any Cobra Kai fans out there are looking to find more Cobra Kai content, because we gotta wait for spin-offs now. I'm doing reaction and breakdown videos of the episodes that I was in, and I'm planning on doing more content in regards to that, and having maybe some other cast members come on and stuff like that. And yeah, and I'm always making, comedy sketches and little short films and stuff. So there's a lot that I'm planning on filming and releasing soon. So yeah, feel free to check it out. Yeah.
Highly recommend that follow. And Brandon, appreciate you sharing your time and coming on here on the Game Plan to talk all about this final season of Cobra Kai. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much for having me on. Thank you.